Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, "Don't Sell Me a Car You Don't Own." So after I got out of the army and got divorced, I came home. I had nothing and my parents let me stay with them until I got on my feet. I got a job working for the 6 Feet Foot Rat in CA. I worked for the arm of that company that builds the theme parks. I am a Stitch Witch costumer and worked in a department called figure finishing. Basically any animatronics you see on the rides that has clothes or fur, we did. In other words, we covered everything. So, next order of business was to get a car. One of the guys who worked in a neighboring department heard I was looking and had an old Ford Taurus he'd sell me for $2,500 and would let me drive it while making payments. Since it was still in his name, he took care of the registration and insurance. Well, the day finally came that I paid it off and wanted the paperwork so it would truly be mine. One little problem. The paperwork listed a lien holder. Shockingly, I am not nearly as stupid as I look. In my head, I lost my crap, but calmly asked aloud, "Did you seriously sell me a car you don't actually ducking own?" He gave me a song and dance that I had actually been paying the lien holder off and he was just having a little trouble getting the paperwork that said so, but insisted that the car was absolutely mine. I am not stupid, but sometimes I am too nice. After about a month of asking him for it and getting the run around, I had it. "Fine, the car is mine you say. Then I will do what I want with it." The weekend of my 27th birthday, I gathered all my fellow Stitch Witches together and covered just about the entire car with neon faux fur. $200 bucks of auto trim adhesive, $250 worth of faux fur, $50 of spray paint, and about 20 hours later I had my masterpiece. Monday morning we all got to work early and waited, with my beast parked front and center. The look on his face when he realized that it was the Taurus was sublime. He stormed up to me and, "What the hell did you do to my car? I thought you said it was my car. Isn't that what you kept telling me? Since it is mine, I decided to make it my own." Dudes. He was so upset he could only sputter and stomp away. Every time I or another SW passed him, we'd simply say, "Title." I drove it that way for 6 months. Then I dumped 3 bottles of cheap cologne in it, used the entire car as my ashtray for a week, stripped it of the fur. It was left with little bits of fur stuck to the clear coat, stripped blue paint and Sharpie marks from plotting the pattern. I had my stepdad follow me to his house, where I blocked him in his driveway, cranked up the gangster rap, left it running and locked the keys in the car. Then I went and picked up the brand new car I had saved for. I am a sweetheart, but don't duck with me. I will bury you. Next one is titled, "Don't Pay Child Support, Get Wrecked." Story begins long before my current spouse met me. Her story, I have some involvement and permission to post. Her son's dad was ordered to pay child support in 2004. He paid for a few years until she moved to Idaho in late 2005. The local child support office where the dad lived didn't enforce his non-payments. The father had the same job since before child support was ordered and still has that job. Mother was poor and struggling. In 2016, she had to hire 2 sets of lawyers to restart child support and got it restarted in her state. She was poor and it took that time to save and borrow to pay the lawyers. I met her in 2018, and by 2019, after telling her child support never goes away, she requested an audit for the missing child support. In 2020, they set a court date to determine the amount owed. We had that case a few days ago. We had prepared, but weren't allowed to speak much and present what we had found out. He had submitted an income and expenses declaration. On it, he declined to list his assets, but the next page he said he had a mortgage. We looked up the house. Bought for around $160,000 and currently worth $404,000. He also has a 401k. We also found out his wife was ill. He claimed she lived with him, but posts on social media indicated she was in an assisted living facility. In court, the judge rocked. Called him out on having the ability to pay. His lawyer tried to claim he didn't know about the child support. Judge pointed out that he had paid at the beginning. Asked the state child support lawyer if they had done enforcement actions, and they had to admit that it was mother's state that had done so. But we didn't get to bring up his assets or lies. The judge awarded $106,000 in arrears and set payment at $750. This will take 12+ years to pay. But non-payment of child support is criminal, in some cases federally criminal. Over 2 years and/or $10,000 owed. Federal gets involved when the child is in a different state. So we sent an email to the local district attorney's office notifying them of this issue and the fact that he lied on his form with the proof attached. Worst case scenario, he pays for the next 12 years and pays more than the $106,000 due to accruing interest, and the prosecutor doesn't pursue. Best case scenario, the prosecutor decides there's meat there and goes after him, causing immediate payment in full, fines, and jail time. Next one is titled, Pizza Guy Gets Revenge Against Crappy Parking Job. This happened day before yesterday. I was taking a shift at my local pizza place as a delivery driver. We don't have any designated parking spaces, so I typically pick one of the spots out in the main parking lot in front of the doors. Well, as I was pulling into the parking lot, I noticed some guy parked over the line in a space. Now, I personally hate people who park like that, too lazy to park right in the first place. Anyways, I noticed he was still in his car, probably looking at his phone. So I decide it's time for some petty revenge. I have an 05 Mercury Sable, which is a pretty thin car. So I'm able to pull into the spot right next to this guy with enough space for me to get out on my side, and my car is mere inches from his driver's side door. There's no way he'll be able to get out without hitting my car with his door. Especially since, from what I could tell, he was a really big guy, at least 200 pounds. By the time he realizes what's happened, I'm already out of my car and heading back into the pizza place. The dude slams on his horn and speeds out of the spot he was in, picking another spot about 3 or 4 spaces down. It was small, but incredibly satisfying. No confrontation afterwards. I had picked up another delivery and was gone before anything else could happen. Guy, if you're reading this, park right next time. Next one is titled, Too Bored with Me? Think I'm wasting your time? Fine. A few years ago I was going shopping with my father. We're going to get a dozen watches for his employees. My father got busy and told me to check the watches until he finished what he was doing. We were in a mall with a few watch shops in it. I went to one shop and asked to see a few watches. The owner seemed to treat me badly for some reason. I told him I am intending to get a few watches. A few minutes later he asked me, "So you gonna pay or what?" I told him I'm just waiting for my father and I will get the watches soon. I continued to look in the store for some time and asked him to show me one of the watches. He told me, "I will as soon as your father gets here," with a huge smirk on his face. I told him that is no longer necessary and left. I could see a look of victory on his face as he thought he just won and annoyed, irritated someone who was wasting his time. My father later came and we went past his store to another store close to his. We bought the watches from there. I held them and passed the first store in slow motion, admiring the owner's look of defeat and disappointment as I walked carrying a dozen watches from his rival store. Who is smirking now? Next one is titled, He Had a Laundry List of Criminal Offenses, I Found Out Just in Time. I met a guy while vacationing in California one summer, a really nice guy, and he always wanted to do something fun and different every day. From hiking, paintballing, swimming, or going out on the ocean. After the vacation ended, we kept in touch, and over the course of the next year we decided I would move to California. I work in healthcare as a nurse, so getting a job almost anywhere isn't tough, but as the new nurse, your hours are going to be crappy. No surprise, so after we've lived together for a few months and working terrible hours, they go back to normal hours and we can really spend more time together. I'm not really one to snoop around. He had a safe in the bedroom where we kept basic safe stuff like passports, SS cards, birth certificates, etc. But one day I had to produce my birth certificate and had to go into the safe while he wasn't home. I found my birth certificate easily, but next to it was a birth certificate with an entirely different name and job than what his was. So I asked him about it and he got super defensive and yelled at me for snooping, totally out of character for him as I've never seen him yell before. I still wanted to know, and based on his reaction and the fact I moved to a different state to be with him, I deserved to know if he was hiding anything. A few days later he finally tells me the truth. He used to be married and has twins. This caught me off guard because normally you tell someone you are in a relationship with if you have kids. That doesn't bother me as much as him using a different name, however. So he decides this is the time to be totally honest with me, tells me he didn't want to pay child support or alimony because she was cheating on him, but he couldn't prove it in court and he believed the kids weren't his, even though he also admitted they did a paternity test and he's the father. What the duck? So he simply started using his old friend's name and information that he for some reason had after they were college roommates. So many red flags are now flying. Why did he have his roommate's birth certificate and social security number? He never did answer that, and googling the name never did turn anything up. Then he decided to admit he's been cheating on me ever since I moved out here, since we are being honest, and he finally could share his life with someone. What the duck? So I moved out that very night to sleep on another nurse's couch. He, however, refused to leave me alone and eventually started to threaten me over the phone. Big mistake, you just admitted to skipping out on child support, alimony, court orders, and identity theft. I started looking up his hometown and state, one thing he didn't seem to lie about, and found public records of his divorce and tracked down his ex-wife on Facebook. After she finally responded about a week later, she confirmed from pictures it was him and was really interested in knowing where he was. Turns out he not only skipped out on child support and alimony, but he also stole her car years ago when he left and opened several credit cards in her name before he decided to leave town and was wanted for all of that. I mildly kept in touch with him, telling him I needed time to figure it all out before we could try again. About 2 months later, he was arrested and began proceedings to get him transported back to his home state. He did call me from jail for about a week, but I refused to pay for the calls. He then had his attorney contact me, and I told his attorney that if he ever contacted me again I'd call the cops for harassment. I then started searching his name and everything through his home state's court access site and found out he was sentenced to 6 years for the credit cards, motor vehicle theft, theft of a firearm, and several contempts of court charges. I kept in contact with the ex-wife for a bit. She was thankful they finally found him. Also, for a bit more on top of it all, it turns out once he gets out of prison in his home state, he will be arrested and charged for the stuff that they uncovered and figured out in California over the past few years. Turns out he also did a good amount of credit card fraud out there. So don't threaten to smash someone's face in for breaking up with you if you are committing identity theft and are on the run from child support. Next one is titled, "The Proof is in the Cow Print." Apparently this act of revenge wasn't pro enough, but I hope it will give you a good chuckle. In 2005 I worked as a research assistant through a temp agency at an industrial refrigeration company. I had been there about 6 months, had created new innovations to help make the research technicians' jobs easier, and found the problem in an ice maker that saved the company millions in service calls and buybacks. McDonald's was their largest client. The research technician I worked for was the senior technician. He was a funny guy, but had a large ego, been with the company since graduating high school a little over 30 years. He was 49 at the time. Then only reason I remember was because they held a 50th birthday party for him, remember that? After that party, he came in Monday morning bragging about taking a drunken female co-worker home and about other things they did. His conversation was overheard by another co-worker that was trying to go out with that female. A few days later I was called into HR to give a statement. I told him I played it down to try to not get him in trouble, which he didn't, to the dismay of many. About a month later I got a call from my temp agency saying my assignment had ended and I was okay with that. I knew how it was working through a temp agency. I would be off 2 weeks tops, then be offered a new assignment unless I found a better job in the meantime. So one day I went back just to have lunch with friends I made working there, and the senior technician flipped out because I was there. I mean, made a huge scene, so I left, not wanting to start any problems for my friends. So later asked them if they could find out why the senior technician threw such a big fit. They found out the senior technician had ended my assignment because I participated in the investigation a month earlier, even though I covered his rear as much as possible without lying to them. He had made up a pack of lies to tell his boss and only waited so it wouldn't look like retaliation. The man had a big mouth, so couldn't help but to brag about how we railroaded me. So I was rather PO'd, to say the least. At the time, this was one of the best jobs I had at the time. It had great people, even the senior technician didn't seem like a bad guy at the time. What the senior technician had also forgotten is I knew most of his dirty secrets. I had a flash drive. At the time they didn't have a cloud or a server to store documents, and you used multiple computers depending on which lab you were in. I hadn't reformatted yet, and it had all my Word and Excel files. So I fired off a few emails to his bosses showing where he had manufactured data on tests he had performed with the data sets I still had, and it led to an investigation into him. He trying to explain it as just a disgruntled ex-employee, which yes I was, but facts are facts and I hate being stabbed in the back. He even contacted me asking why I was doing this, why was I lying to get him in trouble. What? Wait one damn second, who lied about whom here? And I told him as much in very profane language. What was really happened is over his time with the company he had held many positions including sales. He made a bunch of relationships, and when some of these friends wanted units they would contact him. He would then take new units off the line for testing, then sell that unit as damaged at used prices, plus a generous finder's fee, still well below retail. When he sold the units I had to keep a spreadsheet with model hash S, serial hash S, tests preformed, sale date, price, and location. I would send them it to him weekly because some of them were legit tested models as well. Then he would turn it in, after he altered the dates to make it look like he had enough time to run the tests or tried the new experimental parts. They were still skeptical until I brought up a cow print cooler they had been looking for before I left. It was a custom build for a well-known national ice cream company and it had vanished, so I told them where it was and that if they went to that location they would also find 3 brand new units still with the factory soldered pipes. Needless to say, there was a new senior technician soon after. I was offered my old job back, but declined since I had a new full-time job. I stay in contact with some of my friends there for a time. And about a year later I heard the old senior technicians had lost his house, his new truck that he had spent $1,000 customizing, Ram 1500 quad cab 4x4 Hemi 4 in lift, 35s, you get the picture, his retirement that he had earned after 30 years, and missed out on the 6-month severance everybody got when the company was bought out, and that location closed only about a month after he left. But wait, there's more. Icing on the cake. The place I went to after had an employee interview panel for potential candidates. This was about 3 years after the matter, and who walks into the interview? Yup, you guessed it. He had applied for one of our 4 openings since we were expanding. We make eye contact. I smiled like the Cheshire Cat. He looked PO'd to see me. I gave him a fair interview, but in discussion did convey was had transpired years earlier. However, the application pool was pretty poor that round and he had technical experience we need, so they did offer him a IOB, which he thankfully turned down. I always believed and hoped it was because of me. Next one is titled, Revenge Against Greedy Parking Job. I went to pick up my best boy from the vet. It was blazing out and I parked in an almost empty lot a ways away under a single tree with a bit of shade. Had to carry Rooney out after major dental surgery and needed to put him in the passenger seat. Passed a guy walking to my truck and thought nothing of it. Well, get to my truck and someone, had to be that guy, parked over the line so he could get more shade, with literally just barely enough room for me to open my passenger door. Thought it would have been harder to get Rooney to his seat in his condition from the driver's side, so I opened the other door and squeezed Rooney into his seat. It was very difficult. Then I put my keys in my right hand as I held my door so no cameras could see, and just happened to put some major deep scars in that guy's door. Turned out to be a fond memory. Last one is titled, Don't Be a Witch or Karma Will Be One Too. So I'm in high school. There's this one girl who was a complete witch to everyone. She was constantly complaining, and cried over getting a 96 on a quiz. However, she would constantly ask everyone to be her walking agenda and remind her about homework. Most people would just dismiss this, but a handful of girls would always give her these assignments, sometimes completed. I'm friends with one of these girls, who broke down one day and admitted that she was being threatened to give these assignments and more. I don't want to share her anguish on the internet, but it was some nasty crap. I found more girls who had incidents with Miss Witch, including her stereotypically locking people in lockers, putting gum in the hair of one girl who had longer hair than her, the list goes on and on. I was formulating a plan of attack when this witch took it too far. We were part of a group project. She got increasingly more frustrated and attacked me with scissors, saying I won't allow to have longer hair than her. The principal got involved but barely did anything. It wasn't too big of a deal, but she was witching about how this would bring down her chances of getting into Harvard if we screw up. Everyone knew she was grades-centered, but Harvard was a stretch for her knowledge. Without my friend's detailed study guides, she would be toast. So me and my friend got a good grade on the project, and then started a project of our own. We made detailed fake study guides with the wrong answers. We figured out her email and set her up for tons of shopping center mailing lists, the ones that would bombard you about sales and discounts, on her school email. Next, we dutifully forgot to remind her about a presentation due. Over the course of the month, my friend didn't give her any work but the fake study guides. We watched as the witch failed her tests, presentation, and homework because she couldn't find it in her inbox. She got into a regular university but not Harvard like she wanted. I do feel like a jerk for ruining her dream college, but most of the work she used to get there wasn't her own. Maybe this will give her a smaller ego. Either way, she's been wrong for all she did wrong. Thanks for listening.